This podcast is part of the Deluxe Edition Network. To find other great shows on the network, head over to deluxeeditionnetwork.com. That's deluxeeditionnetwork.com.
Coffee-fueled stories. Hello. It's me, Michelle, your host and pocket DJ. You're listening to Coffee-Fueled Stories, a show where storytelling and coffee hang out. This is the final episode of Season 3. We finished the year with another great guest, Helen Aitchison. I totally messed up my own intro when I was talking with her, and then I totally messed up her name. We had a good laugh, and we kept going. Thank you for listening and making Season 3 end on a high note. Wishing you happy holidays and a safe and healthy new year. Helen Aitchison. I just screwed it up and I'm so sorry.
It's all right. It sounded a bit Australian there. I liked it.
So, Helen, we're going to talk about a couple of your books, The Dinner Club,
Yes.
and Life and Love Attempts of Kitty Cook.
Yeah.
We have a lot to chat about, so welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for inviting us.
So let's let the listeners know a little bit about you. You are in England.
I am in northeast England, kind of close to the Scottish border.
Oh, very cool. So do you go into Scotland and just every now and then pop in for like a cup of tea or anything like that?
No, not really. Probably once a year. I'm about an hour and a half away from Edinburgh. So I'm on the coastline, the northeast coast, which is beautiful. We've got a beautiful coastline and lots of history and countryside. So it's a brilliant place, and the people are known for being friendly and with good banter.
There's something so magical about like the folklore, the mythology, the countryside. It's magical. It just sounds like a magical place to live.
I mean, it is, especially my part of the world, it's got a lot of history. And it is a brilliant place. There's something for everyone in the area I live in, but it is cold all the time, Michelle. And I think we always want what we haven't got. And likewise, I love America, I love California, So we always kind of want something we haven't got, but we have got a real rich tapestry of history in the UK. And that is very interesting and appealing to tourists as well as locals.
So
well, come and visit. And you can meet
I
Eric.
most definitely will. I would. Let's get to know Helen. So your lovely books. So in your acknowledgments, you use the word delightful in regard to Dinner Club. And this is what's crazy. I read it and I wrote down delightful story, characters, and world. I too wanted to be a guest at Dinner Club. And then I got to your acknowledgments and I saw delightful and I was like,
get in.
I was like, I'm there. I'm so there. And then the best word that I could describe for life and love of Kitty Cook, and there was just this endearingness about it. Let's talk about that one first. So breakups suck, right?
Yes. And in the book, the character of Kitty is based on myself. And I had kind of 30 odd first dates till I found my beloved. So it was really, I guess, important for me as someone who was single after a long-term relationship in the 30s, that you can find love in different places. So I did a lot of internet dating, but also you can meet people in real life, at work or at the gym or, bumping into someone in a supermarket. So it was important for me to write that book as part of the fact that I had some really terrible dates, and 85% of those dates are true. Obviously slightly altered for reasons I don't want to be going to court. But those incidences are true. And I think we can kind of, when we're in a long-term relationship or a breakup, we need to find ourselves again. So for me, Kitty Cook was around first and foremost self-acceptance and self-love, and then being ready to go back into the unknown and into the world of dating after a decade where things change, dating life changes. But I never really give up on love. And when I was dating, on my many, many, many dates, my friend who was 20 years older than me was also dating. So it was just to kind of demonstrate that you're never too old to find love. When you can find love in different places, and there is a happy ever after for everyone. You've just sometimes got to be a bit more patient, like Kitty Cook was.
Absolutely. As I'm reading your book and I'm thinking about like when I was younger and breaking up and how it just seemed harder to try to, as you said, find yourself again or find new people to help you find yourself again. And it seems like now, back when I was dealing with breakups, it seemed harder. Now there's meetups, social media, so many ways to meet new people and find joy as one is healing. There's retail therapy, there's food. You can join cooking classes. It seems like I felt like I pretty much only had a few places to go. And it seems like now where we have the capacity to go tell a whole lot of someone else's or don't tell anybody else now.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a culture change as well, I think, Michelle, which is really important. And I think as generations have passed, it's more acceptable to meet people in different places, and to keep looking for the right person rather than settling, maybe for a first date. And I always think about my grandma who spent, 35 years alone after my granddad passed. And if that happened now, it would be much more accepted that she could find a new partner. And I think that's brilliant about the way dating life's changed, and that people are more accepting of different relationships where they were never in the past. Yeah. And really, it is around finding that person for each and every one of us, and that we should never give up hope. But there is a lot more choice, and people can be themselves without the pressure of having to be something that they're not, or expected to conform to a norm that was around 20 years ago. And I think that's really progressive in the relationship world. And I think it makes it much easier for people to not be lonely and to not be alone.
Absolutely. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Matchmaker with Janeane Garofalo. So they have a matchmaking festival. It takes place in Ireland. What's really cool about that particular movie is it shows the young trying to find love, and it shows the older who've been alone, the widows, the widowers, who are like, you know what? It's cold and lonely in my house. I don't want to be cold and lonely in my house. I want to share a cup of tea with someone and have a conversation. It's exactly what you said. Like now it's a lot more socially acceptable to not just if you're okay, let's use me, for example. I became a widow at 47. So am I just supposed to not have anyone for the rest of my life? I mean, I could, but I did find a happily ever after, and I didn't know that I would. And,
absolutely.
And so again, this goes back to, it's not how it was a few generations ago, where you just
we've always had that. We've always had that need. There's like, I love the theorist called Maslow, and this hierarchy of needs is you're never going to get to the top of self-actualization unless you have the basics. And the basics, as well as shelter and food, is love. And it's just fundamental to us as human beings, and we're born to love and be loved, and that's regardless of how I have breakups or we'll lose people, which is tragic. And I know you write a lot about this in your memoir, but for me, there's something about we deserve happiness, and the people who we give our love to deserve that from us as well as receiving it back. So I hope people read Kitty Cook and thought, well, actually, I'm single, but I could go and find someone, and it happens at any age, and there is someone for everyone. And that's the main message, but also around accepting myself and that we're enough. And that can be hard after a breakup, and it was hard for me, but it worked out the best path that I could have walked, and now I'm lucky enough to have found my happy ever after. So hopefully everyone gives himself that chance, really.
Absolutely. And to tap in on grief real quickly, because it fits perfectly with this part of the conversation. On page 44 of Dinner Club, in regard to grief, they say time heals. It doesn't. It gives us better ways of managing grief, but it never dissolves the pain. We simply become used to the void in our life. And that's 100% true. Like it never goes away. We just figure out how to live with that little, dark spot or hole in your heart, however you want to describe it. Loss is loss, if you think about it. The difference is one's gone forever
Yeah.
And the other one is still alive, but there's still a
Absolutely.
loss. There's still a hole. So grief and breakups. So these passages kind of are similar, so even
Yeah,
though it is a breakup, it's still a loss. And by the way, I
absolutely.
love Derek. I love
Oh, I'm pleased. I love
Oh,
Derek as well.
he's like a teddy bear. You just want to hug him.
Mhm.
You just want to hug
He is,
Derek.
he is.
So since we're talking about Derek and things of that nature, food, let's get on the topic of food because I love talking about food.
Me too.
Okay, perfect. So let's get to know you. What is a favorite dish you like to cook and or eat or both?
Right, this is a brilliant question because there's a guy in the writing community, Daniel Monroe, who is brilliant, and he's also a trained chef. So as well as being artistic with his words, he's artistic with his food. So one of my favorite foods is crisps, like potato chips, and I do eat quite healthy. I'm vegetarian. I've been a vegetarian for over 3 decades. But I love crisps. So my favorite meal, and my partner laughs at us because I'm just like the cheapest like foodie ever, is just loads of crisps, like a crisp sandwich. I like a bit of lettuce, bit of cucumber, some cheese, and then some crisps. So Daniel does Taste Tuesday, and every Tuesday there's this beautiful array of artistic food that is just styled to perfection and looks even too good to eat. It's like a masterpiece. So I said, well, I want a crisp sandwich. So today he's done a video that is on Instagram of just like 3 slices of bread, which is genius, with crisps in between. I was just like, that is perfect. So to answer your question, although I do cook and I do a lot of cooking from scratch, my favourite food is a crisp sandwich. And it's just, no matter where I go in the world, I just want crisps, to be honest with you. So that's my favourite. And kind of like your more corn snack crisps, so kind of onion rings and cheese puffs, cheese balls, that type of thing are my favourite. Cheetos, I love spicy Cheetos, which you get a lot of in America. So yeah, that's my favourite food. I know I sound like an 8-year-old, but that's it.
I love it. And there's something, and maybe you can appreciate this as well. So when I was trying to, like find happiness and things that would bring me joy, one of the things I realized was nachos. There's something about a chip with a little bit of cheese and maybe, beans, like black beans or refried beans, and a little bit of salsa. That was like the perfect quote meal, right?
Perfect.
So,
Yeah.
it's a meal. It's a meal on a little chip. So the fact that you're talking about a crisp sandwich, I'm like, I'm right there with you, Helen. I will eat a meal on a chip. So there you go.
Perfect. Who needs top class restaurants when you can have a bag of Cheetos or Doritos sorted?
I love it. So then a couple of questions here. So favorite dish, cooked dish. So we've got the crisp sandwich, but your favorite smell and your favorite sound.
Oh, I think my favorite smell, this is another weird one, probably has to be, you'll get this with Onyx, the smell of Eric's like head, especially in the summer when I just kiss his little head and inhale his like catty scent. His fur just smells amazing. And when I lost my cat, when I moved out of home when I was 18, the first thing I got was a cat before I got a bed from the rescue centre, and when Holly was called. And I just remember the smell of Holly's head. And then when he died, I didn't have that for about 6 years before I was ready to have another cat. And when we got Eric and I smelled his little hair, and I was just like, that's the smell. Like, I just think it's amazing, especially in the sun when his little fur's been warmed up a little bit, and it just smells of comfort and love.
I love that. I love that. And then what would be your favorite sound?
Have you noticed how Coffee Fueled Stories doesn't have any ads? That's because I work tirelessly to keep this show alive. After 3 years on my own, I've decided I need to ask for your help. I've never asked anyone to subscribe. I've never asked anyone to leave a review. I've never asked anyone to rate the show. And I've never asked anyone to pay to listen. There are a few ways you can help support the show. I've created a Patreon page, Coffee Fueled Stories, and a subscription section on my podcast website. It's simple to support and help me keep my dream alive. Just click the link in the show notes to set up your paid subscription option. It's that easy. Thank you for your support.
Well, it's certainly not Eric's cry, because that's like a baby who it's just an awful cry. My favourite sound. I think my favourite sound is when I'm working from home, or I come in from work if I've been out and about, and I get a hello from my partner, and it's just, I just know I'm home. You know, it's not just about a place, it's about who you're with. And I think that's my favourite. My favourite sound is him just saying hello, you know, when I come in, and knowing that he's there and kind of there to welcome us. So I think that's probably my favourite sound.
Aw, that's lovely. And then what would be your favourite sweet or treat?
Oh, shall I go for an adult version or an 8-year-old?
Could be both. Doesn't have to be one.
I do love, I think you guys will have it there, like a sticky toffee pudding in custard. So normally, or like a syrup sponge, normally it's made, a sticky toffee pudding is traditionally made with dates. And I would have it with like hot custard. That would probably be my favourite sweet treat, but I literally never have it. So if not, it would just be some chocolate, something like, I love Maltesers. You get Maltesers there? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like Maltesers. Lindt chocolate. Or even just, as is mentioned quite a lot in both my books, a ginger nut biscuit dipped in a cup of tea. I think you can never go wrong with biscuits and tea, or coffee for yourself. I'm a tea drinker, but biscuits and tea, that's 3, isn't it? I've been really greedy there.
No, that's perfect. That leads to the last, well, the penultimate question. So I have tea, coffee, or other for you.
Tea. I've got my cup of tea here. I wish I liked coffee, Michelle, but I don't. But this time of year in particular, where it's all like, all kind of latte and Christmassy flavours and cinnamon, I think, I wish I liked coffee, but I just don't. So it's always tea. Yorkshire tea being my favourite.
You answered my question. I've never tried Yorkshire tea. I've had Earl Grey, Irish breakfast, English breakfast, and Persian tea. I love Persian tea. But I've never had Yorkshire tea. Is that like
It's just like English breakfast, really. Or like you have Lipton, don't you? And when I'm in the States, I only get Lipton tea bags. So yeah, it's just like an English breakfast, really. But out of all of the kind of English breakfast teas, I think it's the nicest. It is a lovely, strong cuppa, just very, very tasty. And I probably have about 10 cups a day.
Nice. Is it called like pH tips or something like that?
pH tips, yeah, that one's okay. But Tetley, you might have heard of Tetley as well.
Tetley, yeah.
Yeah.
And then of course there's what's the Harrods? Harrods tea is
yes,
phenomenal. Yeah. My mom was a huge tea drinker. And so here, you'll appreciate this story. So my mom came to visit me. So I went off and I joined the military, and then I didn't come back home. I moved to a different state, and I finally had her over, and I made her a cup of tea because I went out and I bought all kinds of things for her so that she could feel comfortable in my new home in this other state. But Helen, I did not have porcelain or bone china. I served her tea in my coffee mugs, and I microwaved the water, and then
what?
I think her head like split open.
Microwave the water?
Because I didn't have a kettle. Kettle.
Right,
and so I had to make do. It's kind of like I felt like I was camping inside my own home, even though I wasn't. I mean, it was a home. I had running water, I had, sewer, I had everything, but I didn't have bone china or porcelain, and I didn't have a kettle. And she drank it, but she was like, "Don't you ever microwave my water."
Yeah, that sounds bad. It's bad times.
And So from that point on, I always bought a kettle. I always had a kettle on the stove. Now, mind you, the thing was empty and dusty like for years because she didn't come visit. Like I would go visit her. But if she ever wanted to come visit me, I had a kettle, damn it.
I had it ready. You had it ready, but it put her off. The first time it put her off, that microwave water.
I was taught, and the funniest part too was she told everybody in the family, because my mom knows, like I grew up knowing how to serve my mom tea. Like I always like proper tea. Like she grew up in Argentina and she drank high tea because the British influence was very prevalent there. And so so when I served her the tea that I microwaved,
you never heard the end of it.
I never heard the end of it. I never. And I always had a kettle though. After that I learned. I was like, all right, you don't have to flog me forever on this one. I got you. I was like, I learned the first time. So here's the final question. Did writing Dinner Club make you hungry?
I'm kind of always hungry. I'm always thinking about food, so probably. But I would have had a lot of breaks with a lot of biscuits and snacks to keep us going, which I think is important when you're writing. You know, to keep your energy levels up. So yeah, it would have made us hungry. But I'm always kind of in that state anyway. So
good. It wasn't just me, because I was reading it and I was like, I'm hungry, and I don't know if it was because I haven't eaten. Or I don't know. There was just I got excited when he would go shopping, when he would go to the shops.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, what are we gonna get? What are we gonna get?
What's he getting? Is he getting any crisps?
Yeah. So now that we've discussed Dinner Club, I would like to talk with you about the other things that you work on. So I do have on here, I want to talk about your writing and your editing, your charity work, Eric, duty and veterans voices, and your poetry and short stories. So brilliant. Sound good?
Brilliant.
All right. So I know I said that that was the last question about Dinner Club, but I actually have one more question as I was going through my notes. So how did the idea for Dinner Club come about? And are there any characters based on actual people?
Oh, that's a good question. So I think from a lot of my work experience, which was like 20 years working in health and social care, and just from life in general, I feel that food really brings people together. I used to do a group for women who had experienced sexual violence and domestic abuse, and me and my colleague used to have this group every week, and it was a place where women came together, and it was sometimes the only safe space they had that week, and they would eat toast, would make toast, would have biscuits, and everyone enjoyed the environment and the food, and it was just the simplicity of sharing something. And I think, one of the ways of well-being is to give to other people, and I think people get as much from giving something as receiving, and I think there's a lot of power in making something for someone, even if that's a cup of tea or a slice of toast. And I remember when I lived alone for quite some time after my breakup, I would go up to my parents, I would go to friends, and the tea or the toast or whatever they made has always tasted 1,000,000% better because it wasn't me having to do it. So there's something really powerful about the concept of eating together, but everything else that is in addition to the food. So I wanted to write about characters, and I'm particularly interested in, this is coming up in my next release as well, my next book, around intergenerational relationships and how people can get on with people who are very different to them. We just don't sometimes have the opportunity to meet new people. So the Dinner Club kind of came from my experiences and my understanding of the psychology of people, the impact of food, and that really we might look different, but underneath we're all very similar. So it was all around the kind of, friendship and love and loss and hope and acceptance and finding your tribe, your people, finding your people and feeling comfortable. So that's where it kind of came from. I didn't really know where it was going. I just sort of wrote it and let the curveballs come in. But the character, so Florence, is based on my grandma. And when I was writing the Dinner Club, my grandma died suddenly. So it became really cathartic for me. And there's kind of little bits of Violet and me And then the rest of the people, there's kind of, I guess, snippets of people that I know and that I've met or I've worked with. There's tiny parts of my partner in Eddie, Maury's personality. So yeah, it is inspired by real people, and I always write about things that I know and things I've either experienced personally or through work or that loved ones have experienced. And I think that's where my authentic voice comes through lived experience and through writing about what we know. And that's what I always kind of advocate people to do. So yeah, does that kind of answer?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. That's perfect. And so that brings us to the next section. So this is perfect. It's a great segue. So, how did you find the writing and the editing world? Like, did you always know as a child you wanted to be a writer? Like, was that something that you just inherently wanted?
No, never. I was totally not interested. Never thought about it. And I kind of fell into writing predominantly through reading. A colleague of mine who was in the police for many years retired and came to work with the charity I worked for. So he had been working with sex workers as a police officer on the vice team, and then he came over to the charity. In one of the services that I was managing and other people managed was around working with victims of sex trafficking and sexual exploitation and sex workers. So we saw both sides of the coin, so to speak. And he wrote a book about his experiences, which was brilliant, and I was so proud of him. So he got me back into reading. And then from there, it just kind of snowballed. There was opportunities, and I thought, I want to write something. And then I read a brilliant book by Mitch Albom that really stayed with me, and I thought, I want someone to feel like I do now by reading my writing. So I thought, well, I'll just give it a go. And this was before lockdown, and I began writing small pieces, Michelle, so poetry in particular, which I think is a really brilliant outlet for your emotional state. So I was writing about things that were clearly my emotional state, and I found it very therapeutic. And I started to get little things published, so I thought, well, they can't be that rubbish. And then I started to write the Dinner Club. So basically before that, I'd never had any writing experience. I wasn't interested, and I think that's really important. And when I teach creative writing, I really kind of sell the fact that you can have always wanted to have done something, and that's brilliant, but you can wake up one day with a dream and absolutely try and pursue it, and everything in between. So society tells us that we've always wanted to do something, to be this, to be that, to be the other, but really we can learn a skill at any age. And for me, writing is about imagination, it's about life experience, it's about story, and it's about our own narrative. And I think that comes at any time. You can always have wanted to have done it, or you can wake up and think, I'm going to give it a try, and the only feeling is never try. And so no, I never wanted to be a writer. Even when I was writing, I thought, I'm not a writer. Even when I got published, I was still like, right, I feel like I'm in a cartoon, I don't feel genuine. But now I've accepted it, absorbed it, and I'm proud of myself and all the help I've had along the way. So yeah, that's my story. So it's only 4 years. I've been writing for 4 years.
Wow, and the writing style, I would never know. It seems like it's been something that you've been doing like your whole life. It seems very natural. Like the prose is like everything about it is just very easy reading. It's not like thick. And I don't mean that like in a bad way. This is a compliment, damn it. It was I don't know, that, like I said, there was just something really, I love, like I said, it was delightful. Like the best way I can describe Dinner Club was it was delightful to read. It was delicious to read. It was had a great story. And from the second we get introduced to Derek, you're like, I was instantly sucked in. Instantly. I was like, Brenda's a bitch. Like, I'm like, bitch. Pardon my language. I was like, fuck Brenda. So, like, and that was by page 2. Yeah. Page 2. I was like, Derek, good. Brenda, you'll get hit by a truck or something. Fuck off. Love it. So I was trying not to be so violent, but what I'm saying is, you just instantly get sucked in. And then same thing with Kitty, she day 3 of breakup, and then day 5. and so you just instantly transported us into your world. And it wasn't and I think there's just something, storytelling, like you said, we all have stories to tell. And that's why we do these things. And that's why I want to share these things. And especially you do a lot of charity work, and that there's several reasons I wanted to talk with you. Number one, the books. Number 2, your charity work. And then, number 3, Eric, number 4, I would love to talk about duty and veteran voices. Like, I would love to, and so we don't have to go in that order. So we're going to save Eric for last, because I've got a feeling he's going to take up a lot of time, and we want to give veterans voices some time, and I want to give duty some time, and I want to give you some time. So Eric, you're just going to have to wait.
You have to wait. You have to be patient for once in his little life.
Yes. So tell us about duty and veteran voices, please.
Brilliant. Thank you. So I set up a community interest company, which is like a non-profit organisation, last May. And at the time I was still working full-time at a charity where I worked for 15 years. Right on the Tyne is around combining my love for writing with my whole career, which has always been about working with marginalised groups. It's all I've ever done. And I'd be rubbish at loads of other things, but I was really good at my job. And I think, I'm saying that because I think we don't give ourselves credit enough. And within my job, I used to manage a number of services for marginalised groups, which included people who were homeless. It included young people leaving care, people experiencing domestic abuse, sexual violence and modern slavery, and veterans. So I managed some services over the years that were specifically for veterans who were more complex with regards to addiction issues, or were ex-offenders, or were homeless, or had mental ill health and physical health issues. So I know quite a lot about military history. I'm really interested. My father served as a reservist for over 4 decades, and he still works to support the cadets, even though he's 71. My grandfather was in the military. My grandma worked at the factory that built parts for the Lancaster bomber for the Second World War. So there's a lot of kind of bits of military history in my family. So when I set up Right on the Tyne, the first gig that I got was for the Queen's Jubilee. And there was a pot of money, and a local charity, Operation Veteran, got in touch with me via a friend of ours, a mutual friend who did a lot of bid writing, and asked if I would like to do something. So obviously I was really excited. It was the first thing I was going to do. I did do it in a ridiculously short period of time, which I would never ever do again. But I got involved with the charity, and I went along and I met veterans. And the veterans were aged between 31, the youngest lady in the book, right up to 94, a lady called Audrey, who was a Wren after the Second World War, and everyone in between. And it covered 7 decades of conflict. And when I went and kind of said, this is who I am, this is what I'm going to do, most of the people said, no one wants to hear my story, Pet. And I was like, everyone wants to hear your story. And what really astonished me, even with the experience I'd had in the work field, and working with veterans, so all of my services were run by veterans. I'm not a veteran, but the staff, the support staff for veterans. And these individuals had never been asked the question. They'd never been asked, what it was like in Northern Ireland, or what it was like in Iraq or Afghanistan, and they just expected to get on with it. And the kind of relished the thought of speaking to someone who actually showed interest and wanted to know about the history, and that they were only children. They were 16 and 17 when they went into the forces. So it was brilliant. It was a brilliant experience. And by the end of it, when we launched the book, they all came along with the medals and the uniforms, and all of them wanted to stand up and talk about the story. And it was just such an important forum for them to be able to voice their experiences and how it impacted on their lives. And I just remember one guy who's in the book, Alan, who was a photographer as well as a soldier, and he was in Northern Ireland. in the Troubles, and he had to go and take photos of the players who were the terrorists, and he also had to go and identify body parts and look at, take photos of the dead, really. And he had this massive photo album out, and he just said, it was like, what do you like with dead bodies? And I was like, oh. And he had all these photos, and he was talking about what was clearly PTSD, and he got really upset. And this guy's in his 70s, and I said, Alan, is no one ever spoken to you about this? And he just said, no one's ever asked. And I thought, that answers everything. No one's ever asked this man how he felt after being in Northern Ireland and everywhere else, And for me, it was around raising awareness, but also celebrating our heroes, because they never see themselves as heroes. Being in the military, but they never see themselves as heroes, and we're just not grateful enough for the fact that these people have helped to shape our survival and our safety, and that they are heroes. And for me, they're part of history, and it's really important that their stories remain and that they're there forever. And it was great for me, Veterans Voices, because I was able to put my own father's story in there, and I learned things about my dad that I didn't know, which was, it was really interesting. So it was a lovely experience. And then duty. So I've published a couple of anthologies on different topics. I've just released one around people's experiences of addiction and recovery to substance misuse, and a book about women and how women's roles have changed over time in an area of Newcastle that suffers from deprivation, and how community stays the same, and how just women's roles have changed, basically. And after Veteran Voices, I decided to look at having a branch of a publishing house as part of the Community Interest Company. And the aims of the Community Interest Company right on time are around making writing accessible and inclusive, and around getting Northern voices heard and Northern stories told. And that was always really important to me, in particular working with people who would never get an opportunity and would never be asked those questions, or who think their story isn't important. So when I opened up as a publishing arm of it officially, I have signed a fictional author who will be releasing her book with me, but Duty came along, and it's just brilliant. It's just a brilliant book, and it got to number 2 in veteran autobiographies, behind Chris Ryan. So I was like, get in on Saturday. But Jeff Stevenson, the author, he's everything that a Geordie should be. So Geordies, the type of the person from my part of the world, we call ourselves Geordies. And he's just a brilliant character. So when I was helping him and developing his memoir, and he was writing it more backwards and forwards, it was really easy, because he's everything a character should be, but a very natural one. And everything that a Geordie should be, everything a person should be. So he's a hard worker, he's a family man, he's humble, and he's got brilliant crack and brilliant banter, which is, which we're known for in the Northeast. So his story is quite phenomenal. He grew up on a really difficult housing estate in the northeast of England, and struggled at school. And then 3 days after his 17th birthday, he joined the Marines. And the training, I mean, I thought I knew quite a bit, but this training is the most grueling. Like, it was just intense. And we're talking about, in the late 1970s, early 80s. He's 60 next year. I can't do the maths. But the training was just brutal. And then after that, when he kind of completed his training, he went to the Falklands, and he was part of the Battle of Mount Harriet, and then he went to Northern Ireland, and then he joined the fire brigade, where he was in the fire service for 25 years. So his book is around his career, Michelle, and in the different roles he's had, and he had a few jobs in between, and now he's a personal trainer focusing on mindset and mental health. And not only is it about his duty in a work capacity, but it's about his family, it's about his children, it's about his mother, it's about him being a friend, being part of the community. And for all the really powerful, poignant, moving parts of the book, there's some absolute laugh out loud moments, and that's what's got Jeff through that, and his mindset, that camaraderie, the kind of darkest of humours at the most critical times. You know, and that's what kind of kept him going and his comrades going through some of the most unbelievable situations. And it's kept him going throughout his life. So it's a brilliant book, and it's been an absolute honour for Right on the Time to publish it, and just to help, you know, give Jeff that platform and give him that voice, and hopefully again inspire other people to write memoirs, because we think, well, life isn't interesting, but we're all very interesting. We've all got our own narrative, and it's important to share.
Absolutely. Thank you for saying that. And thank you for, you know, doing the work that you do and sharing these stories, because it's very, like you said, a lot of the times people don't think, or they think, who wants to read my story? Like, right. Like I did a mini memoir, and I'm like, I don't know if the only people that read my blog were like 3 people. And I was like, I'll, you know, throw it out there. So I literally dipped my toe in the water. And now, you know, I'm going to do book 2. And so I was like, you know what, if somebody else out there can, you know, find some sort of peace or joy in my words, then I've done my job, which was literally just one thing: share my story. That's it. Sharing our stories are so important. That's what connects us. That's why I went and got my degree in literature. It's because we tell stories and we connect through stories.
Sorry, your story is really important because of the, you know, talking about love and loss and grief and strength. People will think and see that if Michelle can do it, I can do it. So you don't realise, you know, when you're sharing something really important to you and personally, not only is it cathartic, but it can literally change people's lives. You know, it can save people's lives. The words can save people's lives because people feel alone. And reading your memoir and other memoirs and bits of writing coming from the heart can absolutely transform someone and make them have hope. And that's just, it's priceless. It's absolutely priceless.
Absolutely. And what's funny is, as you were talking about duty, and my mind kind of flashed to when I was stationed in Turkey. I was part of a humanitarian effort, and the British soldiers were there. And I hung out with these guys, and I'll tell you what, the best stories I have are hanging out with the British soldiers. They're badasses. They were hardcore, and they were so much fun and crazy. Like, we would go to their tent. So there was Tent City on base, and we lived in the dorms. So we had buildings, but you didn't hang out in the dorms. You hung out at the British tent. That's where you went. That's where you went. And it was really cool because inside it had the flag. It had the Union Jack in there, and on the ceiling. And so you walked in and you like instantly felt like you were transported into England. Like I said, it was the place to be. It was the place to hang out. And the work ethic of these guys that work hard, play hard.
Yes.
And then my roommate in the Air Force was, she was actually born in Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe, because her country fell, but her father was SAS. He was a sharpshooter in the SAS. And so I was always like asking, I was like, do you have any crazy stories about your dad? And she's like, yeah, but I can't tell you. She would just mess with me all the time. I was like, what did he do out there? You guys were in Africa. I was like, he's SAS. He's a badass. She's like, yeah, he's a bad SAS. Yeah. So it was a lot. I had, like I said, I had a lot of fun in the military. I like I said, I'm my best friend. I literally have several 30-year friendships, and I have 2 from civilians, but I have 3 that are military. So my 5 best friends, the majority is actually from the military. I met them when I was a baby. We were all babies when we met, and we have all remained friends.
Oh, wow. How long did you serve, Michelle?
I'm sorry?
How long did you serve?
I was only in for 8 years.
Well, that's a lot.
It's, I guess.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your service.
Thank you. It was, like I said, I can't complain about my experience. It was an amazing experience for me. I got to serve in a humanitarian effort. Like, not many people get to say that about the military. And like I said, I met amazing guys. We hung out. The best thing about it was I really learned that when you're in the middle of nowhere, because we were in the middle of nowhere, you bond over the silliest things. Let's get back to, so it's time for Eric.
Oh, Eric.
So is Eric your first cat since?
So I always had cats. At home, I always had cats, and they kind of found us, Michelle. So we'd often have two cats, and then one would maybe pass, and then another one would find us. So we always had cats at home. And then when I moved out from my parents' home, I got a cat from the shelter. And then Holly was like 16 when he died. He lived quite a long life. And then I met my new partner, and Holly was still around, and then he passed. And I just wasn't ready for another cat. And I think because Holly was kind of my company when I split up from me long-term partner. And I was just really struggling to think that I could have another pet, and I think people don't always appreciate how much pets are part of our lives. I haven't got children, and my cat honestly felt like my child. When I would return home after trying to be out all day because I didn't want to be lonely, the cat would be there for us, and at times he was my best friend. So when I lost him, it was a massive blow. And then it was during COVID when I was working at home a little bit more. Even as a key worker, I was kind of doing stuff from home, and I thought, I'm ready for a cat. So Eric was a homeless cat. He was involved with a charity called New Beginnings, a local charity to me who rescue cats and feral cats. And one of the ladies who actually lives in my street, it's really weird how people are linked, but the lady who lived in my street and we didn't know at the time, bless her, she goes around and picks up like dead cats off the side of roads and tries to find out who they belong to. God love her. So she's a total earth angel. But I got in touch with a lady who I knew who was a foster carer for cats, and Eric was at her home, and she had a small flat and like 18 cats and a dog, and trying to just look after these cats for the charity. So we went and got Eric, and we found out that Eric had nearly died 3 times of cat flu, and he's a bit of a runt. He's got really small legs but a big heart. So we brought Eric home, and he kind of settled really quickly, Michelle, and just his little personality, he's very vocal, his noise is terrible. And when I was on me Teams calls, he kept putting his bum hole on the screen to show me colleagues and his empty ball sack, which was quite embarrassing when I was on a call with like the police and social services. Then you just get a quick, the screen would be taken off with Eric's ginger balls, ball sack in his bum hole. So he wasn't as cute then, but people just loved him, and he's such a character. And what happened was basically my partner, when I began my social media sort of journey for me writing, my partner started a social media for Eric. And Eric is just an absolute sensation, especially on Twitter, and he's just a real joy. And people on Twitter are awful, but if you're a cat, it's just a delight, to be honest. So they love Eric, and every morning people will say, Eric, I can't stop my day, I've seen a photo of you, and he just brings joy to so many people. And because of that, he entered the Cats Protection Awards, and he won, and we're on the One show and on BBC, and got an award, and brought it home for the North East. So he's done really well. He's just been selling calendars, nudes, of 2024, and we'll raise about £170 through selling calendars, and we'll split that money and took it to 2 cat charities, including New Beginnings, where Eric was from. And next year Eric's going to start his own children's book, and I kind of fell into this because at the Cats Protection Awards I was on the Prosecco, so I was all excited, and I mentioned doing a children's book, not having any idea how to do a children's book, but I mentioned doing it. So now I've committed to doing a children's book about Eric with a focus on Adopt, Don't Shop, and the proceeds will go to Cats Protection, the charity. So that'll be happening next year. So he's dead excited to be in his own book he continues to have his own social media and just loves making friends, and just getting the praise, because he had such a terrible start to life and he was so desperate. And now he's got his forever home. And we just want to celebrate the rescue cat, and cats in general, and just how they can give a home the paw print of approval. So that's about Eric. What about your Onyx then? What's the story there?
So I actually, Brandy, my partner, she has had him for 20, he's going to be 24 next year.
Way.
So he's 23 right now.
Oh my word.
So I grew up much like you. My first pet was a cat. And I unfortunately we moved. My dad was in the Army, and so we were living in Texas, and then we moved back home to California, and the cat didn't come with us, and I was just crushed. Exactly, that face, just crushed. There's a picture, I'm gonna have to send it to you. I have a picture of me as a little toddler with the cat in my pram. I hated my pram. Okay, I hated it. I never pushed it around. It was this olive green 70s horrible thing. And I didn't play with dolls, so I don't know why my mom got me this pram in the first place. But the cat, that was her favorite place. And when the cat was in the pram, I was happy. I would push the pram around, but if there was a dolly in it, forget it. That thing was staying in the corner. So I grew up with cats. Like, it was just like my first love. Like, and same thing, we rescued her. She had babies underneath our car. And so we rescued her. We didn't get to keep any of the kitties, but we kept her. All the cats went to, our neighbors. And then, like I said, so just, crushed as a child, as a 5-year-old. And then my mom had a couple of cats, growing up, but they were never my cats. I never had a cat. And so all my life, all I ever wanted was a cat that I could come home to, that would curl up on my lap, that would just purr me to sleep. These are the things that I've always wanted, but I never had. And then, fast forward, with Brandy, I was nervous to meet her cat. I was, because I was like, is he going to like me? And so I met the dog and the cat, and they both loved me. And so I was like, okay, I have a family. Like, I was like, my life is full. I was like, I have a partner, and we have a dog, and we have a cat. I have an instant family. Like, this is great. Life is great. And as I got to know him, he truly became the cat I truly always wanted. He is the sweetest cat. He doesn't scratch. He doesn't bite. Unless you have, food in your hand, and then he like tries to swat at it, and is just being a cat. But he is the sweetest. He truly is the cat that I waited my whole life for, and I didn't get him until I was 47. 48. So true love, even in fur friends, you never know when you're gonna get it. You never know.
That's perfect.
It's perfect.
Awesome.
It really is. Been truly lovely getting to know you. And I hate that we're going to be ending here soon. Things coming up that you want to share.
Yes, please. So my next book, with my publisher, Cahill Davis Publishing, is due out next April. And that's called 31 Days of May. And it is basically about a young girl, a young woman who experiences some tragedy and starts to find light in the darkest of places. So without giving too much away, it's kind of about serendipity and about hope and friendship. So that comes out in April next year. And the Eric book will be out next summer. And I'm also working on a book for people who have survived mental ill health. That's with the NHS and a charity called Every Turn. So that'll be coming out next May for Mental Health Month. But apart from that, I'm hoping to have a bit of a quieter year in 2024. I haven't got the energy I had 20 years ago, or 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago. But it's all good. And thank you very much for inviting us along and for being interested in my world and Eric.
Absolutely. It's been a true pleasure getting to know you. And I'm going to have to try some Yorkshire tea. I'm really curious to have, I'm ready. I'm going to go see if I can find some Yorkshire tea. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing your stories. Thank you for hanging out. Thank you for, of course, I have your Eric, the smell of Eric. I was like, I want to smell Eric now too. So, so thank you so much. Could you send us off and say my tagline, go forth and be magical?
Thank you very much. Go forth and be magical.